Because I'm nearing the end of the month and bumping up to the limits of my data stream, we're not sure how long the connections will be running smoothly or not. We'll give it a go. There's and see our patrons. Even if it lasts just a minute or two, we will at least be able to stick all the material on here. Continuing with the replacing Darwin reference bibliography, he repeats more of the same genetic stuff that actually we covered in previous episodes. He did drop a 2002 paper by Bari on primate fossils versus genetics. And what about it, why is he dealing with an old 2002 paper? So I looked into a little bit more about that, and I'll be putting a link up not only to the 2002 paper, but also to a 2012 work by Stiper and Seifert, which is discussing the issues involved about how you try to work out the fact that it looks like the primate fossil record is starting around 55 million years ago. The genetic data suggests that some kind of divergence is happening genetically much earlier, 70 million years ago. Oh, oh, hi. As I pointed out about Lamont, marsupials are not my main area of expertise. I know a little bit about them. We covered a bit of it in the various books. I'm certainly not at sophisticated PowerPoint level on that, and I've got the problems about the issues of the accessibility matter on Wi-Fi. So uncertain one way or another. I couldn't actually add any more to it than the generic bit that the marsupials are in that early stage of evolution between the monotreme level of egg-laying mammals and then the final placental models. And the marsupials go far and wide. They're very effective. They pretty much dominate the show in Australia and hold their own quite nicely. And opossums get around even in the age of full-blown placental mammals. But beyond that, there's an awful lot about the genetics and the biogeography and other matters in relation to the various clades of marsupials that I'm just kind of rudimentary. Anyway, back to the point of the show. Paper relates to the fact that if the mutation rate is a bit lower or faster than what we're expecting, not a lot, that can alter our issue about whether the fossils we're seeing reflect really the early stages of the primates or maybe just by the time they become prominent enough. We also have to remember how many of primates and mammals in general are only known from teeth. So pretty much by definition, any genetic test for phylogeny, the fossils, because what you're looking at fossil level is the whole okay, back up there. And that will become clear on that other area. The part of the show related to a 2021 posting by Cserhati on red panda conservation. This is a real loony one. Creation-based conservation for the red panda. And I'll be putting a link up to it and also an earlier piece on from 2010 on dog breeding, which was basically a diatribe on eugenics. And Cserhati also cited a paper from 2020, which was the main point that they were riffing off of, which related to what kind of procedures can you do to try to save the red panda. And talking about biogeography and temporal history, all of which exceeds the framework of young earth creationism, what Cserhati was talking about. Cserhati had, quote, but do evolution-based conservation efforts like this isolation work? Isolation, last thing an inbred species needs. Inbred animals have a low genetic diversity, meaning that they are more likely to inherit matching harmful mutations from both of their parents. And that then brought up the Leadna Cosner piece. Whoa, Nelly, did Cserhati really want to bring that up about low population levels? Because isn't that the gigantic problem with the whole ark concept and the animals that would have been aboard that, where they would have been phenomenally limited restrictive range. And the interesting bit is that until and unless creationists ever get to the stage where they can work out what the original genomes were for the various created kinds and resolve all of their created heterozygosity issues, they're barking up a completely untenable tree. And I don't think it will be ever possible for people way above Cserhati's pay grade at the John Sanford, Nathaniel Jensen, Robert Carter genetic level to ever be able to retro-calculate what the genomes were for human beings, Adam and Eve, and or Noah and the kids, or any of the other organisms that they think were on board the ark. And it would be increasingly untenable the fact that supposedly all of this is taking place only a few thousand years ago. And there's no mutation rate you can get to be fast enough that altering them that much. So trying to work out all the haplotypes and the genomes of the various species that supposedly are forming within families, all within that frame, and have some manner of unbelievable heterozygosity, maybe even polyploidy. I mean, it's just loony. Those are going to be the technical papers on there. Actually, not too bad of a little bit of up to speed on where I'm at on chapter 2 in the big slide. And the books were there too. Just diving into the creation of carnivory and organisms. Were somehow evolved later. Actually, involved in the that one hasn't gained traction. So that's going to be discussed in some info boxes. What I've been having a fun time doing is trying to pull together a year's worth of research on various creationist publications. Much of the relevant issues are, and one is really things that's been one of the fascinating things that I've seen over many, many years is how creationists have been starting to backpedal on that carnivory. All the creationists agree that carnivory didn't exist at creation. Sometime after the fall, supposedly, carnivorous organisms emerge. It looks like it's the other way around in actual living animals, of where carnivorous forms are actually the start, and some of them develop into herbivorous variations. We'll be citing technical literature on that in a 2019 paper on that stuff. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff. But the point is that it was increasingly impossible to ignore the fact that tooth and claw marks of carnivory, predation, and the like are showing up all through the fossil record. And so it's no coincidence that Todd Wood and Marcus Ross, the actual creationist paleontologists, reached the stage fairly early on in the 21st century that it's impossible to ignore that there would have been carnivorous organisms existing prior to the flood because they're preserved in the geologic column, and that's all flood deposit, right? So they've been backpedaling on that in a way. And therefore, that's a diagnostic measure that those who still cling to the carnivory only after the fall are running off of that older brand of creationism, and they're not really paying attention to what's going on in the current crowd, in the baraminology set, where they've really got to deal with it. So you can chalk then up the carnivory, whether or not natural selection exists, whether or not speciation occurs, all of those, and whether or not plate tectonics happens. All of those are diagnostics that have evolved over time in creationism, but not necessarily amongst people who rely on Henry Morris and Duane Gish books, or old Canthovian lectures, which is basically the petrified version of that classic 1970s creationism, still running in the 21st century. Oh, hi, Vesta. I started a little bit early, down to the end of the month, even though I've been sort of rationing how much time I spend online to keep my thing below the data field level. When I get down to the end of the month like this, I'm exceeding my load limit. And what the Wi-Fi router and that basically does is ration a little bit of the speed. Fortunately, it doesn't stop it. So depending on circumstances, I'm still able to download my technical material, do my work, and even do little shit. So we'll keep on going on the matter. I'm, if anything, more hyped about what the content of the second half of The Rocks Were There will be than I was for the first book. I'm all delighted at all that we assembled in Volume 1. All the material, the really deep dive into the origin of tetrapods and all of that issue. And then, of course, my end with the cosmology chapter that's going to be up fun and game ones. And there'll be a lot of stuff that's outside of the cosmology issue because so much of it brings up the Plinium halos and that range, Canthovian's bunch, and their weird ideas about cosmology. And then there will be little sidebars in the info boxes on some of the wacky notions they have and the bits about climatology and ice age and all that. I'll be mainly on Jackson to get the overall superstructure of the order and structure in which we're going to be talking about these various issues. So when we get down, there will be a point then when I'll be starting to insert a lot of the geologic material that I had sorted out, including the material on the Canyon and that, because that's largely a Precambrian since thing, and there's aspects of it that flow into the Cambrian, and there's, by the time you get up to the dinosaur era, you're at the top end of the geologic range of what's going on in the Grand Canyon, but the canyon itself is formed much later after that. So there'll be interesting issues about all of that stuff plugging into it. But if anything, there will be a lot more on a lot of the geological ins and outs and all the biological ins and outs. Plus, I'm keeping track of the incoming technical literature. So we've got a lot of stuff that's from 2021, 22 dates on technical literature to a lot of the matters. There's going to be a good comprehensive dive crop and that's taking place and the impact society and how it can't possibly fit into the creationist box. There's a lot of that in the Big Slosh chapter, and as well as all the so no hyperlinks in Volume 2. No, I'm terribly sorry. I have not yet caught up the exciting world of Ramat, who that you can put a hyperlink in a physical print book and that it somehow is going to work. We do proceed that there will always be the updated listing. There's a few examples, as in the previous book, some juicy little oddball bits that appeared online many years ago, but no longer exist. They're so juicy that we allude to them as well. They always in records basically that I have. But the vast majority of the material is available online. And the one thing that's been a little bit of an awkward problem in doing research, and is one of the reasons I, as an old fart, have always been leery about going the hyperlink route, is that many archives get shifted over time. So as a general scholarly point, if you're looking for something that somebody has mentioned as an online thing, don't become discouraged if the hyperlink that you're given no longer works, because it's entirely possible the information hasn't gone away. It's just not where that link is anymore because they stopped running that website or they reshuffled all the material. There's some creationist websites that I know that if you try Googling literally this stuff is. So keep a track of things, and there is a benefit to having a hard copy of particularly juicy items just in case the stuff ceases to exist online, which it can do. and you can keep your own posting on have access to a process column or a blog column, and have a version or an archived version of that material, so that if it disappears on the main file, you still got a record of it, and other scholars can actually follow up on the record of it. So all of this is a game that we're all in, as to information slip away. And especially the stupid issue, because many people will like to tidy up their background, to eliminate the weirdness that they did in previous times, and pretend that their position. So there's still all areas that look like it's gone forever, and no idea where the remembered is in my own record keeping area, and some stuff on the peppered moths and a few other little things that are like that, and some things on whale evolution of John Cserhati that have been suppressed over time, and they've tinkered around with things and gotten with problems. And minor loose ends. There's more than enough information that is readily accessible online that for serious criticism of creationists has just a glut. But nonetheless, the scholar in me wants every little teeny little bit pinned down. Yeah, there will be no hyperlinks in volume 2, and there will be a continuation. Just to give you a background size, the chapter we're working on now is over 100 pages long, and it will probably be considerably long once I get all the material tucked in. It'll be when it's changed to the typeface we used in volume 1, but still, it's a lot of references. And who knows all the stuff that we'll be putting additional material we get to, all the stuff that Jackson is working on his end. So you can see why it dawned on us fairly early that the project that we had bitten off after content arguments of 4 and Genesis books was going to be a pretty good size project, and it's turned into exactly that. But I think it'll be a useful addition to the field, in addition to all the later works. For those still floating around in the chat, I haven't been able to highlight anybody up on the screen, and I'm not getting the sidebar in there, so we're not in that. Oh, wait a minute, chat. Oh, let's see if that clicks. Yeah, we're running about like 80% signal. Yeah, it's not showing up on the other aspect. Anyway, we've been on for 17 minutes. I'll be putting all the links into the material that Jensen has, as well as all that Cserhati stuff. So once the thing finalizes, everyone will be able to get a link on it. And we'll see where we are next week. Everybody stay safe. We are sort of oozing out of the mask. Anybody is passed out, I got it in the pocket. And we'll see you all next week. Everybody stay safe.